Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Alex Cedillo with Mr. Deeds Buys Houses. So we're going to talk about the 4 common deeds today.
What's the purpose of a deed? You know, are you trying to sell a house? You trying to refinance? Are you just trying to put it under your name? What's the purpose, right? So once you figure out the purpose, you'll definitely be able to know which is the right type of deed for you, your specific situation.
Well, think about it. Most people, when they're trying to get their deeds or they're trying to understand what the deed is, they make the assumption that the deed is the title to a house and they want to transfer it. And a lot of times they're usually looking at that from the standpoint of how to maybe even get off the deed because they're going through a divorce. And then the other might be because they've inherited it and they want to change the deed, transfer it over so they can take control, pay the taxes, whatever the case is, and they go from there.
Yes. So, and that leads to, you know, the very common misconception of what's the difference between deed and title, right? And a lot of times, depending on what deed you end up using will affect the title to the property. So to give you an example, I'm a hands-on visual kind of person. If Mr. Alex Cedillo was to sell me his house, we could literally print a deed from the internet, go to Google, type, print deed. He could sign over his house to me. He would literally just sell me his house through a deed. That doesn't necessarily transfer over the title, which the title is the legal right to ownership. Let's just say Mr. Cedillo is married. Well, just because he transfers over his deed to me doesn't mean he transfers the other ownership of his wife to me. So that's the main difference between a deed and title. So when you're looking to sell your house, the main thing that your buyer is going to be looking at is whether you have the legal right to transfer ownership to him via warranty deed. Okay? Now, once we get that.
So what does warranty mean?
Well, a warranty basically just tells a buyer that there's no other owners, there's no other liens, there's no taxes. Basically, there's no problems with the property, with the deed that comes with the house. Okay?
So if I were to go to the store, because I know some people try to do this, whether they've inherited the house or whatever, and they didn't go through a title, they didn't go through the process, somebody deceased, or maybe they're talking about going through a divorce and they want to go down to Staples or Office Depot? Office Depot. And they got those little forms in the business section or whatever, and they go and get this, what's called the quick claim deed. What do you suggest? I mean, what if I bring that to you and sign it, and do we got a transaction? Is it done?
Yes and no. That's the beauty about real estate, right? Can we have a transaction? Absolutely. We can go to Home Depot, pulls out cash, whatever, signs the paperwork. He can literally transfer over the property with a quick claim deed. However, the challenge with a quick claim deed is that typically most people will use it, like, for example, a mom is giving a house to his son, or a wife is getting divorced and is transferring ownership to, say, the ex-spouse. But that doesn't reference, say, the house has a mortgage. That doesn't reference anything with the mortgage. Doesn't reference any of the liens. Yes. So,
or not only that, not any other owners that might be untitled.
Correct.
Difference, deed type.
Exactly. So basically, a quick claim deed does not give the buyer any protection, saying whether there's any other liens, mortgages, taxes, or owners of the property, of the house.
Right.
Correct.
So technically, the quick claim deed is not necessarily a deed. So although you can do this transaction, it's actually a release to claim rights to that property. It's relinquishing my rights to that property for whatever, and I can sign over my rights. Let's just say it's myself and my siblings, myself, my brother, and my sister. Well, I can sign over my rights and he could sit there and basically give me cash for that, but all it does is relinquish the rights. Here's the thing that you need to understand. If you're in the state of Texas, and I know there's a few other states, but in the state of Texas, titles do not recognize quick claim deed as a transfer of ownership. All it is relinquishing your rights. That is it. So don't think you're gonna go to the Staples and get this done and actually do a transaction and now you own the house. That's not the case. That does not transfer over the deed, the title to the house to you, so.
Correct. Another one that we typically see is one that's called the special warranty deed. The special warranty deed actually ensures or covers the legal right to ownership, the title. However, there is a limitation to it. So let's just say once again, Mr. Cedillo is selling me his house and he's giving me a special warranty deed and he's only owned the house for say 5 years. That means that I'm only ensured that there's nothing wrong with the house, that he's the only owner for that specific 5 years that he's owned it. It doesn't guarantee a buyer that there is no claims, no other owners before those 5 years that he's owned it, okay? The other one would be general warranty deed. This one is the one that we're all commonly used. So if you bought a house, if you've gone to the office and you signed that big stack of papers when you're buying it with the mortgage, the title company is actually providing you what's called a general warranty deed. And this is guarantees this is a guarantee from the seller to the buyer that they're the full owners, that there's nothing wrong with the home, with the property, there's no claims, there's no liens on it. This would normally only be done through a title insurance company, at least here in Texas. I can't speak on behalf of other states.
Well, you could do it through a title company, you could do it through an attorney, but you want to make sure you're dealing with a real estate attorney, not just any attorney, a real estate attorney, and somebody that might be addressing or that's familiar with your type of transaction, whether it's residential, whether it's commercial, but whether it's land. You want to make sure that you get the right attorney. Not all attorneys are created equal, so make sure that you look into that and qualify before you proceed forward. So the other one that's very important that we need to speak on, so keep in mind, special warranty deed is only the coverage for when the owner owned the property, like he's used in the example of 5 years. It's only for that section and that's it, nothing before. So from the origination of the land when it came up and, well, it didn't come up, but the buildup of the house or whatever the case is, then it doesn't cover any of that. The general warranty deed will do full coverage all the way to its origination. The other one to keep a lookout for, because this is very important and it is kind of common out there for people that are looking where you're buying a house on an owner finance and you want to sell it now, then there's what's called a contract for deed.
Contract for deed is actually, it gives a lot of protection to the person selling the house, but if you're the person buying the house on owner finance, it actually limits your protections. The main thing about a contract for deed is most people don't know when they buy a house, your typical way through a mortgage, you're getting the deed to the house. It is yours. You can do whatever you want with it as long as you pay your mortgage and keep it insured and pay your property taxes. But it's your house. However, on a contract for deed, which is a type of owner financing, it is not your house until you actually end up making that final payment. It becomes yours. Then you get the deed to the house. The challenge with that is, let's just say you want to claim the homestead exemption to reduce your property taxes. You don't own the house, so you don't get to claim homestead exemptions. Now let's just say at the end of the year, you want to go ahead and get that mortgage deduction interest. You don't get that. You don't get you don't have ownership of the house. So a lot of the homestead protections that come with owning a home, you definitely don't get them when you get a contract for deed, because you're not getting the deed to the house until your final payment and the house is paid off full.
I was going to use the analogy of just think about it whenever when you buy a car, right? You get the title, right? So think of the same analogy. It's the same thing. If you sit there and you look at when you're going to buy a car, when do you get you don't get, what is it, the pink one or whatever?
Title, the blue title? What is the?
Yeah, but you don't get the original. You get just like a certified, non-negotiable, non-transferable, whatever, until you make the last payment. Then you actually get the title to the car. So it's the same process to that respect for when you're doing contract for deed. The important thing that Izzy's talking about, that, you know, if you want to do your homestead exemptions, there's some validation in what you want to do and how you want to do it, but there's a couple of things that are important, because this is something that we commonly see in the industry. When we're looking to buy houses and somebody's trying to sell, they went through an owner finance with somebody. They may or may not have even recorded the contract for deed in the county records. So it doesn't even show them as having ownership. Through documentation, technically they don't even show as ownership. So it doesn't even show that they have equity in the house. In the eyes of the law in the state of Texas, for sure, you have ownership as long as you have an agreement. You want to make sure you got a copy of that to be able to perform or produce that out, so that way we can get the payoff statement if that's the case. Because obviously you have maybe money that you still owe to that owner finance seller. And there's two things. A lot of times there's two issues. Well, one is an issue, the other one is not. It can be free and clear, and then they sold it to you on owner finance. Make sense? And so it's free and clear, no big deal, right? You're paying it, you're only indebted to the seller owner. And then the other one is where there's an underlying lien. They sold you the house, but then there's still a mortgage that they have to pay. So when you pay them, say $1,000 as an example for your monthly mortgage, then they turn around and pay their mortgage $800 and they keep the $200 difference or whatever it is, right? So that's how that works. But the issue is, if they haven't recorded it, sometimes some of these sellers, they get into a financial burden, like many people are doing today. And they keep your money that you're receiving. This was actually on the news the other day, wasn't it?
Yes.
Was that the case, scenario? So they had a mortgage, I think, prior, and then they were receiving the payments from the buyer, but then they weren't paying the mortgage. And I think that house went to foreclosure.
Sure. You know, because you don't own it until you make the final payment, there's no guarantees that there's another lien on it, or that the person that sold it to you can still go ahead and take out an additional lien on it. Because once again, sometimes they're not recorded, or based on the language on a contract for deed, you're not the technical owner until the final payment. So it really just, as a buyer, you don't have a lot of protections on a contract for deed, for sure.
So if you have this, you're in this situation and you want to sell, is my point, is that you should be able to sell. You just got to make sure you have a copy of your stuff, because then we or anybody else that you're selling to needs to contact the owner, or should I say the seller of the note holder, and that way they can get a payoff statement. And they can give that as a payoff, or whatever the net is, or if you've gotten it paid off, you definitely want to get the release, so that way you actually get the deed of ownership and the title of ownership to the house, so you own it fully vested, that kind of thing. Otherwise, you'll have this issue. Some people try to sit there and sell, they forget about it, they made the last payment, they make the assumption somebody, they documented it and recorded it in the county, and they didn't, and then they don't have a release. And if anything happens to them, let's just say they die, now you're up in a can of worms and you're having issues, because now you got to try to get the release and the guy's already dead. Now there's got to be a probate issue to go on that side. So we're going down the rabbit hole here, but my point is to just be aware, if you're doing owner finance, if you look at your documentation, make sure you got copies of this stuff. You can call us, we'll help you go through the process. I think one of the other things is when people are going through divorce and they want to sell, but then on your divorce decree, there identifies who owns that, the deed to the property. There might be an exception to the rule, and it's a clause in there that basically puts in a lien. So it's like basically you get divorced and they're awarded the house, but there's still a lien for the 50%, 20%, a certain amount of money, whatever the case is still owed to the other person. And so when they sell that, then that person gets that money at that point. So there's some variables on that when you're dealing with a divorce, but you can sell with a divorce situation. That's not a big deal. We've done that multiple times. And sometimes we have to be the therapist?
Yes, the therapist, the third party that just convenes in and keeps everybody happy. Yeah, so we kind of touched on some of the challenges of various deeds, quitclaim deed, contract for deed. If you're trying to sell your house, looking to sell your house, because that's where you're looking at this information, because you're trying to do it yourself. I hope this information helps. if you kind of get stuck in the challenge, feel free to reach out to us, because we've helped numerous homeowners that are looking to sell with these type of deeds in the past, and we know how to circumvent the process and expedite your cash at closing. Anything you'd like to add, Mr. Dita?
Everything's done through the title, so we're all on the up and up. We got multiple title companies that we use. They're licensed through the state, A-rated title companies that we utilize. So I've been doing this for over 22 years now, and so it doesn't matter if it's good, bad, or ugly. It doesn't matter the situation. It doesn't always have to be a bad situation why you want to sell a house. Maybe you just got a property you just want to move on, or it's an expired listing, you try to sell it and it's not selling. Feel free to give us a call. Anybody, you want to clean up your neighborhood and that house that's abandoned in your neighborhood, give us a call. Give us a call. You can reach out to us at MrDeansBuysHouses.com, and you can follow us if you'd like as well, or you can share our information. Find us, like us, follow us, and share. You can find us on Facebook, Mr. Deeds Buys Houses, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're on YouTube. We've got other videos on there as well that'll probably be helpful to you if you see anything you might like. And soon enough, I think we're going to have some kind of a costume that he's going to be wearing, and we're going to be on TikTok. So follow us.
Yes.
Appreciate your time. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.